because they're seeking to constantly keep the world, not least that area around the Caspian Sea, in a state of conflict. This is what they're doing in the Middle East. They want it in a state of conflict because it's very difficult to manipulate a state of harmony where everyone's getting on and everyone's in harmony with each other and supportive and respectful of each other. It's a very difficult situation to manipulate that. Manipulation is much easier when you're in a state of conflict where and hostility, because like Cecil Rhodes in Africa, you can go to a tribal chief and play one against the other and the other one against the other, and you can use the turmoil and the hostility to bring about the outcome that you want. And one of the elements of where they want to take the world is a third world war, which they wish to involve Europe, the United States, and Canada, North America, and Russia and China. I was told by insiders in the 1990s about in America that the plan was to lead to a conflict involving China. For this reason, in the 1800s, letters were written, and particularly one particular letter, between two high-level players in the secret society network, in which the three world wars were described of where they were going to go. And this letter included the detail of countries that would be involved and how it would be started. And it described the First World War, with the Germans brought into conflict with the rest of Europe and America. It described the Second World War in the same terms and said it would lead to a Jewish state in Israel. And the Third World War would be triggered out of the Middle East, involving Israel as the trigger, and would bring about the final global conflict, which would lead to them being able to offer the solution to stop this ever happening again, which would be a world government and a single world army. And the idea of that is to say, if we have a single world army and we bring an end to national armies, then we can't ever again have a war. What they won't tell you is those that have manipulated the war will be the same people that offer the solution to the war, which is exactly the structure of control that they want. And I feel very strongly that Georgia, I'm not saying this war's going to happen tomorrow, but Georgia was a move on the chessboard in this direction. And I'll tell you a story that happened to me in England which relates to this. And it seems, quite a minor story until it starts to play out. Last March 2008, I received a letter from a man in England who is what we call there, or called there, a traffic warden. And his job, they walk along the streets in a uniform, and they give out tickets to cars for illegal parking or whatever. Not many people like them for that reason, but they just do that job. And this traffic warden, he'd been a traffic warden for nearly 20 years, he wrote to me because he read my books, and he said, look, there's something I don't understand, and there's something that's really bewildering me. He said, I've been called in by my boss, and like my colleagues, he said, I've been given 3 cards, authorization cards. He said, one of the cards is to give me authorization to be a traffic warden. Okay. But the second card was what they call in Britain a pace card, and that carries the words that policemen have to say by law when they're arresting somebody. And the third card was the authorization of this man and his colleagues, traffic wardens, to go into private property without permission. So this man, who's a nice guy, he said to his boss, why do I need the statement you make to arrest people if you're a policeman, and why do I need authorization to go into private property? And his boss said, look, I've been told to give them out, take them home, leave them until further notice. A few days later, him and a few other traffic wardens are outside the police station in this county, this town. And a policeman came out that this traffic warden had known a long time, hadn't seen for a while. And the policeman came over and made the small talk, and then he pulled his friend aside. He said, "I want to talk to you." And he said to him 4 or 5 times in this conversation, "You must not breathe a word about this." He said, I've got the job, he said, in this county, and there's someone like me in every other county of the United Kingdom, policeman, whose job it is to organize in preparation for a coming war. He said, "We're preparing for this war well in advance." And he said, what's expected by the government is that when this war starts, there will be massive civil unrest on the streets of Britain and protest. He said, so what's happening is that when that war starts and the protests start and the civil unrest they're expecting, the military and ourselves, police officers, will be focusing on dealing with the civil unrest. And you, traffic wardens, private security guards and companies, closed-circuit television operators, and all these kind of people will be brought forward to do the jobs that police officers currently do while we're dealing with the civil unrest. Well, he sent me the cards and I saw them to confirm they existed. A few days after he contacted me, the British government announced that they were going to redesignate and rename traffic wardens civil enforcement officers, and they were going to give them powers, some of the powers currently that the police have. 10 days ago, all these months later after this happened, 10 days ago, the government in Britain announced that they were introducing a new designation of authority called accredited persons. And these were security guards, private security firms, CCTV operators, etc., who were going to be given accredited person status and given powers that are currently the powers of the police. Now, why I tell this story is that everything that this police officer said was going to happen is happening or has happened. The only thing that remains is the war. And that fits with all these other different pieces of information that suggests that a major conflict is being orchestrated, which is designed to change the face of society. Because there's nothing that changes society faster than a war. And this has been going on way back. One of the examples that I put in my books is the First World War in relation to America. In the 1950s, there was an investigation by a congressional committee called the Reese Committee into what are known in America as tax-exempt foundations. These are organizations funded by the Rockefellers and the major elite families, who then pass the money out in apparently charitable ways, but it's nothing to do with charity. It's to do with funding this agenda while appearing not to be. And one of these organizations that they investigated, and there was a guy called Norman Dodds who was the main investigator, was an organization which is still going in America called the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. What these investigators found was that this Endowment for International Peace was manipulating war. And they found minutes of meetings of this organization from the period in the early part of the 20th century in which they were having meetings and discussions and saying, we need to change the face of American society and society in general. What's the most effective way of doing that? Well, it's a war. So we need to get America involved in a war. And Woodrow Wilson was the president of America at the time, and it's actually in the minutes of this organization that they sent messages to Woodrow Wilson telling him not only he must get involved in this war in Europe, but that he must stay in it for as long as it takes for American society to change in a way that's never going to change back again. And if you look at the world after a war, it's never the same as it was before, especially world wars. And they want this Third World War to change the face of global society to the point where they can introduce this centralized global structure. As they used to say in the 1960s with the Vietnam War, what would happen if we had a war and no one turned up? There'd be no war. What these people do is they declare wars and they get the rest of us to fight them. What we've got to do is stop fighting them and stop falling for this scam. Because if we go into this Third World War, then, you know, goodbye freedom.
Witnesses have told us that the police officers were shouting at this man. What then ensued was gunfire. The man was shot dead by police. One of the police officers was injured. He was taken to hospital. He's since been discharged. Now, overarching all of this is now an investigation by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. That's standard practice because an officer fired a weapon. And the Independent Police Complaints Commission has told us through a statement that this shooting followed a Metropolitan Police operation. Now, they haven't said any more about that, but that gives us a sense that this was part of a larger thing. We don't know whether the police were following this man or whether he was part of this operation, but the IPC saying this shooting followed a Metropolitan Police operation involving the officers who were involved in this shooting. So an investigation underway. This road is still sealed off. Clearly a lot for the police to do.
Yes, we're still waiting to hear the official version from the Independent Police Complaints Commission, the detail of exactly what happened around Mark Duggan's shooting on Thursday night, why he was shot, how he was shot, and principally his family are leading that demand for answers, but there are no or very few official answers at the moment. But I'm told, Jeremy, that the police officers involved in the shooting of Mark Duggan have never claimed that they were fired on.
Record that, son, record that. Get them! Get them! Get them!
It's a girl!
Get them!
It's a fucking girl!
Blood.
It's a girl! Look how he's dealing with her!
Shut
It's a fucking girl! It's a fucking girl! It's a fucking girl, you cunt! It's a fucking girl, you cunt!
British Prime Minister David Cameron has called the riots pure criminality. Speaking after a meeting of the country's emergency committee, he promised that looters will face the full force of the law. Well, joining us live now is Gerard Batten, who's a member of the European Parliament. Thank you for joining us. Some 16,000 officers are expected tonight on the streets of London. Do you think that will be enough?
Well, I think that the police have been outnumbered so far. This is pure criminality. I agree with David Cameron on that. And I think that the point has come where we have to call in the armed forces.
What happens in terms of creating wars is a mind manipulation technique called problem, reaction, solution. And it works like this. First of all, you create the problem, but you get someone else to be blamed for it. You then report that problem through the media in the way you want it reported. You get the public to react to your problem by saying something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it? And at that point, they, who have covertly created the problem and blame someone else, who glean that reaction to do something, then offer the solution to the problems they have created. Like this. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution.
If you tell the people they have an external enemy, they'll follow you anywhere.
The government may actually have been behind September 11th and the September 11th attacks and the conspiracy theories in general surrounding 9/11.
Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution.
The New World Order better stop carrying out terror attacks. We've caught them over 200 times in the last 100 years, Western governments doing this. Hitler did it, the Russians did it, the British do it. Look at America, it's turning into a police state.
Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. And it works like this.
With regard to 7/7, there's been a witness report in which somebody who was on one of the tube trains says that he didn't see a man with a rucksack. In fact, after the explosion, what he saw was metal pointing upwards from the bottom of the carriage. That would indicate, of course, that the bomb was not carried onto the tube train, but was in fact attached underneath it.
Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution.
Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction and he's used...
His weapons of mass destruction program is active, detailed and growing.
There's no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
No doubt at all that we will find evidence of weapons of mass destruction.
And it works like this.
Weapons of mass. Weapons of mass. Weapons of mass destruction.
And it works like this. And it works like this. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. And it works like this. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. And it works like this.
Don't riot. That's what they want.